A product tested in war zones is being made more readily available for civilians.
Quick Clot combat gauze developed in 2008 for troops fighting in Iraq and Afghanistan. Squares of white cloth small enough to fit in your pocket, big enough to save lives.
It looks just like regular gauze, but bound into this fiber is a mineral that actually stops bleeding rapidly.
It looks just like regular gauze you'd find in any first aid kit, but bound into these fibers is a mineral that actually helps stop bleeding rapidly.
Tool that is now in use that may help save the lives of law enforcement officers and the people they serve.
Stopping blood loss from the battlefield to trauma units and ambulances right here in Chicago.
But now medical experts are promoting a type of gauze developed for the military they say can help save lives.
Half of the American soldiers who die in combat bleed to death. The military says these casualties could be prevented with prompt treatment, which is why every U.S. soldier in the field now carries an innovative combat gauze called Quick Clot by Connecticut-based Medica. Cleared by the FDA, the gauze is lined with kaolin, a mineral that stops external bleeding within minutes. Even local law enforcement, like the Hillsborough Sheriff's Office, one of the country's largest departments, deploys all of its units with the gauze.
It saved everybody from innocent victims to traffic crashes to people that have tried to harm deputy sheriffs to themselves. There's nothing in our first aid kit that can replace it.
When the U.S. went to war in the Middle East, our troops were armed not just with weapons, but a life-saving product called Quick Clot to help rapidly stop wounds from bleeding out until the injured could safely make it to a hospital.
The mineral and glycerin clotting formula is used in hospitals as well as on the battlefields in Iraq and Afghanistan.
A person was shot in his carotid artery, and that's normally bleeds out in 90 seconds. And he was able to take our product out, rip it open, self-apply it as he was falling to the ground. And when they found him unconscious, he was alive.
Excessive bleeding is one of the leading causes of death in combat. That's why the military started testing products that can stop it fast.
In surgery, we know that every time a patient bleeds a little bit more than what we expect to do in an operation, these patients most likely will have complications, will stay in the hospital a longer time, and at the end of the day, it cost will be elevated because of that complication that started really with excessive bleeding.
The military was one of the first groups to use what they refer to as combat gauze. Soldiers carry several packages of it with them at all times. And unlike regular Quick Clot, the combat gauze is packaged more compactly and equipped with an X-ray strip.
Advances in field medicine are helping American soldiers in Iraq and Afghanistan survive wounds that would have been deadly in earlier wars. But one of the latest can be applied not only by doctors, but wounded soldiers themselves.
Quick Clot was one of those products. Its success rate for reducing the number of combat deaths due to hemorrhaging earned a seal of approval from the Department of Defense. Now this product is being marketed closer to home. Whether it's a nosebleed or much more serious trauma, the products are designed to make it easier to stabilize victims until medical care arrives.
A police officer is ambushed, did not see it coming, and as he lay dying, the first responders had a simple first aid tool to help save his life.
In his first aid kit, something ironically he used while a Marine in Iraq. A gauze, a special kind of treated gauze which stops bleeding.
Officer Scott Davis are carrying a form of the same gauze as part of their patrol gear. It's helping police save themselves and people in the community.
Battlefield proven, it's got a phenomenal civilian application, and it works. To date, we've had approximately 8 saves. People's lives were actually saved by the officers using it on the persons, stopping the bleeding. And they range from gunshot wounds to stabbing wounds to knife wounds.
I faced 3 times in my leg, my arm, my chest.
9 shots were fired into Fairfield, New Jersey police officer Gerald Veneziano. The shooter even hit the artery in his thigh.
We located a heavy bleeding gunshot wound right above his left leg.
Police officer Michael Orr of a neighboring department in West Caldwell was the first to administer medical aid.
Obviously, it saves lives. I carry it on me personally.
It saved my life.
Since Officer Veneziano's shooting, the Fairfield, New Jersey Police Department has issued Quick Clot gauze to every officer, just in case.
Dallas Police Medical Director Alexander Eastman uses the product on the front lines. He says Hillsborough County, Florida officials use it too. The nice thing about this product is it doesn't take any specialized medical training. It's pretty simple. If you have a wound, put this in it.
Tucson, Arizona. A gunman's fury leaves innocent people shot, bleeding, on the edge of life and death. But in this darkest hour came some hope in the form of something called Quick Clot.
On January 8th, deputies from the Sheriff's Department sped to the scene outside the Safeway with a special kind of first aid kit in tow.
Inspired by military equipment, the goal of the kit is to prevent wounded people from bleeding to death before medical help arrives.
Their first aid kits, called IFAC, were possibly life-saving for some of the victims.
They immediately began to render aid to the victims, and they likely saved some lives.
Now being credited for saving lives in the recent Tucson shootings, as well as the shooting rampage at Fort Hood.
Arizona's Sheriff's Department carries the potentially life-saving gauze, and they put it to good use that day.
The simple equipment from trauma scissors to combat gauze that help many victims survive long enough to get to the hospital.
I used the combat gauze. Used the combat gauze on the 2 female patients.
And doctors there say the medical care that deputies administered literally saved lives.
It was nice to be able to have some tools and equipment and training that I could put to use immediately.
UMC physicians say having those life-saving tools and the 3 deputies on scene is what kept those people alive until they arrived at the hospital.
Cabell County law officers now have tools to save lives. The Cabell-Huntington Hospital, HealthNet, and the Governor's Highway Safety Program paid for some trauma packs.
The company is now marketing variations of the original combat gauze to hospitals and first responders.
Developers are pushing for more use in trauma hospitals.
This is a new pad, and it's basically a quick clot pad. It's a hemostatic agent.
And now a new weapon in their arsenal, a bandage that contains kaolin, a natural mineral that makes platelets stick together, accelerating the blood's ability to coagulate or form clots. Right now, the bandages are approved for use on external wounds, but trauma surgeon Dr. Andrew Dennis has hopes for other applications.
In the operating room here, we have great hopes for things like these, because if I can put a pad on the liver, it becomes like a fire and forget missile. I can put the pad on the liver, I can go do other things, focus my attention on other things that are bleeding.
The Northwest Community EMS system stocks about 100 ambulances and fire engines with the life-saving bandages. Firefighter paramedic Josh Pluta hopes they'll help him stop bleeding well before his patients arrive at the hospital.
We've been doing Quick Clot for a few months here now. If direct pressure fails after a few attempts, we'll go to Quick Clot. I do believe it'll help us save people's lives. If somebody's bleeding out uncontrollably, there's no blood in their body and it'll cause death. If it's that bad, we can save them from bleeding out and hopefully their life.
With the military and law enforcement on board, Medica hopes to expand into more hospitals. Though locally, Hartford, Yale New Haven, and Litchfield County's Sharon Hospital are already customers.
The more blood that's lost, the longer hospitals stay on the other end, the more complications, the more cost to our whole health system.
And the more people that try it, the more amazing stories there are to tell. Some say it's the only reason they're alive to talk about it today.